A guy couldn't afford to get his girl's car fixed, so she asked her ex-boyfriend and he helped her. Listen, the amount of women that are justifying this shit is astonishing. Fellas, do yourself a favor and just stay single, cause it
Y'all, I'm gonna put my take on that in another segment of the show, my 2 cents. Y'all know how I do. But before I even get to that, I am so excited. Excuse my manners. I'm Dr. Sims, host of the Dr. Sims Show. And I have a good friend of mine that's in the studio. I've flown him in all the way from Hollis, Maine. And we met on social media it's 2023. We met about 8 years ago, May, June, July of 2015. And we have been best friends ever since. He's more than a friend. He's my brother. And you'll see for yourself how awesome he is. And guys, those of you that are using social media, don't forget it's still social. Okay, never take the humanness away from what you're doing on social media. So without any further ado, all the way from Hollis, Maine, David. Okay, now that we've hit the record button. Well, hello, my good friend. How you doing, man?
Very good, very good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. Well, introduce yourself to everybody, Brother David.
Yeah, so as Dr. Sims said, I'm David Pride. I own a company, Social Impressions. We do content creation for all kinds of different companies, helping them craft content, posting it, create all their ads. We do a lot of coaching and counseling with people, helping them figure out either why their social media isn't working or how they could tweak it to make it even better. And then also I'm the founder of a 501c3 nonprofit, awesome. Hope for the Arctic. We're focused on raising awareness of the suicide crisis in the Arctic Circle.
That's good. Well, listen, you and I have talked about this on several occasions. How did you start Social Impressions?
So the short version of a really long story is that about 15 years ago, I was recruited by my older brother to go down to Charleston, South Carolina, and sell Carhartt clothing to tobacco farmers.
Wow.
And, as you can imagine, triple stitch clothing that's partially canvas was a real big hit on tobacco farms in 115-degree heat. Right, so it was not a hit in any way. And so I started working for the job and we thought we'd do really well, but I sucked at it. Okay. And soon my brother figured out that I was terrible at it. And then his boss figured out I was terrible at it. And shortly thereafter, I found myself laid off in Charleston, South Carolina with no job, no connections, and no idea what we were going to do.
Okay.
And so at the same time, luckily, Facebook had just come out with Facebook business pages. And I was hearing customers periodically talking about this Facebook thing and how it seemed like it could be useful for their business. And so make a long story short, I decided that sure seemed like that's where everything was headed. Okay. And back then, there weren't really any experts or consultants in the field. And so I kind of just decided overnight that I was a social media expert. And that's one of the reasons why I don't trust experts. Right. And I went on LinkedIn, changed my title to social media expert. And then I literally started dialing for dollars. And we knew we wanted to come back to Maine where my mom was because she was sick at the time. And so I started calling business owners back in Maine, telling them that I was a social media expert. And eventually I got to a large company here in Maine who agreed to meet with me. And that was on a Tuesday. And he said, "When can you be here, David?" Because he assumed I was in Maine and I didn't dare tell him I was in South Carolina. And so I said, awesome. I could be there whenever you want. And he's like, well, how about Thursday? And I said, all right, great. And so I started packing my bags as soon as I hung up. Wow. My wife got home, said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I started a business." And she's like, "Doing what?" And I said, "I'm a social media expert." And she's like, "You don't know anything about social media." And I said, "Yeah, but neither does anybody else." And I hopped in my car and I drove from Charleston, South Carolina to Portland, Maine, about a 25-hour drive. And the entire way I listened to a podcast that's still around called Internet Business Mastery. It was all about online marketing and some social media, and just basically tried to memorize everything they said about social media. Went and met with the client the next day, pitched them, did well enough that they hired me on. They became my first client, and here we are 14 years later.
That is amazing. So you learned on the fly, literally.
Literally. Yeah, I had no options. It was burn the ships and make it work. So
the old adage that when you have to, you will. Desperation is a great source of inspiration, isn't it?
That's right. That's for sure. Yeah, that is for sure.
So over the course of 14 years, from where you started to where you and social media are today, what are you seeing? Any trends? Are you seeing a lot of changes? Is pretty much things have stayed the same? What if you come up 1,000 feet and look down on your 14-year career? What can you say about social media?
Yeah. I mean, the things that, so the only things, in my opinion, that change in social media are the names of the social networks.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and maybe the type of content that you need to produce now versus 10 years ago, let's say. But the approach is always the same,
Okay.
which is authenticity rules the roost.
Okay.
Nobody's in the game, or following a company's page just to get sold to all the
I
time,
understand.
and
That's a good
just to
point.
always hear about like the latest sale, or people like to get a glimpse behind the curtain and understand why they should give a rip about doing business with you. And that's what makes social media so special. And companies
That's
and brands
awesome.
and personal brands that do a good job with their social media are the ones that are allowing people to feel like, oh wow, we're seeing something special by
Right.
following these
How
people.
about
Like we
that?
have a unique relationship,
Right.
and that hasn't changed. What has changed is, now, if you're not producing video content, you're essentially irrelevant.
Right.
If you're not
That's true.
advertising, it's going to be extremely difficult to be able to reach people who are following you in most cases. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, we could do a post on Facebook and reach 25, sometimes even 50% of your following.
Wow.
Nowadays, the average Facebook page reaches about 3% organically. So if you're not advertising on Facebook or Instagram, those sorts of things,
Okay.
you're not going to reach most of your people. And so,
Okay.
thinking that it's still free, a free way for exposure is true in theory, but
Right.
that's a very limited theory. There's a reason why all the major
Okay.
companies are advertising, and that's because if they weren't, they wouldn't be reaching their followers.
Wow. Unpack before we go to our first break. Unpack for me authenticity, because how authentic is authenticity? You know what I'm saying? We can
Mhm.
paint a picture, but how real must that picture be?
Yeah. So, I think it depends on the business and the industry, but in general, um, when I say authenticity, I'm talking about, you know, I see a lot of companies out there who try to
Okay.
marry themselves to tragedy, or try to marry,
Oh,
9/11 sale, or, like the day after Prince died and Getty Images
yeah,
came out with a sale on
yeah.
Prince images, um, where you see brands and businesses who they want to use social media in a relevant way, but
Right,
then they have somebody up in the upper level of management saying, no, this is all about sales. Like, you need to show me the ROI all the
yeah,
time.
right.
And there's a battle quite often between the marketing messaging, and the authenticity of why people give a rip about following you and
Okay,
connecting
okay,
with you, and
okay.
caring with you. Um, and in my opinion, especially when it comes to personal brands, guys like you and
Right.
other influencers, that authenticity is giving people a chance to see, who you really are, and having a
Okay.
chance to, share with people on a more intimate level, than just always making believe, life is magnificent, perfect, and say this magical
Yeah.
mantra and money will fall from the sky.
Right. That is so good. Y'all hold tight. We're going to run to a real quick break. And when we come back, David, I want to know the cardinal rules that you should do and the cardinal rule of things you should not do on social media. Y'all hold tight. We'll be right back.
If you would like to support the Dr. Sim Show, send your donations to Cash App $Walter H. Sims. And remember, we stay high on life.
Okay, guys, we're right back, and we're sitting here with my good friend, my brother, David Pratt of Social Impression. So before break, I'm challenging David to tell us give us the secret sauce. What should we be doing on social media, and what are some of the things we should not do on social media? Talk
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah. So I think, if we start with I'll start with what you shouldn't do. That way we can end it on a positive note.
Okay, that
Um,
sounds good.
you know, Number one, the biggest problem I see people with is they have a lack of patience.
Okay,
And so they think of social media as quick, as free, as almost like a pyramid scheme, get rich quick type of thing, of
right,
like, hey, well, I'm funny, so I'm going to start an Instagram page and everybody's going to magically follow me.
Right.
And then after a month and a half, they're like, oh man, like I have 10 followers. This must
Right.
not work. And then they give up.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, due to their lack of patience, then what it also does is it reveals many times their lack of integrity.
Right.
Because what begins to happen then is like, oh, maybe it's not a bad idea to buy fake followers. Like, we need to boost our following anyhow. So
Right.
if we go ahead and just buy like 10,000 followers off of Fiverr for $16,
Wow.
why does that, like nobody's going to know? It's going to boost my messaging. I have a positive message anyhow.
Right.
So what's really the problem? And what people don't know when they go and do those types of things is A, you're essentially lying to your audience, but
That's
B,
right.
the bigger problem is the algorithm. Because at some point, those 10,000 fake followers are going to get deleted, right? Because
That's
Instagram,
right.
Facebook,
That's right.
all of them are constantly cleaning and getting rid of bots. Twitter just did a huge, or X just did a huge purge a couple weeks
Okay.
ago. And what happens is, just because you have 10,000 followers, if 8,000 of them are fake, and then you go and you tweet or you post, and now the only people interacting with that are your actual organic followers, which, keep in mind, is probably going to be 3 to 10% of your actual following.
Right.
So now we're talking about
That's a
like
good point.
60 people interacting with your content of 9,000. The algorithm is going to look at that and say, hold on, David.
Yeah.
David has 9,000 followers, but only 60 people give a rip about his stuff. His stuff must not be that good.
Yeah.
But imagine if I didn't get impatient,
Okay.
and instead I kept posting daily and kept doing what I knew I needed to be doing, and I grew my following to 1,000 people organically over the next 6 months. And I'm
Right.
posting, and every time I post, 200 people are interacting with it. Well, the algorithm is going to look at that and say, well, David only has 1,000 followers, but 200 of them are interacting with it. We should feed this to more people, right? And so people's impatience makes them look at those vanity numbers and say, oh my God, if I don't have 10,000 followers, people are going to think I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And first of all, those people who think that, they're not your audience. So guess what? They can go take a long walk on a short pier. We're not trying to reach them anyhow. And so, like, we don't need to worry about those people. We're trying to reach people who care about the value that we're bringing. And those people will find you, right? So you don't need to worry about these vanity numbers. The other big mistake I see people make is inconsistency. And so they go, and I think you, Dr. Sims, are a master of consistency. What I see people do a lot is inconsistency, where they'll get all hot and bothered about posting, and they'll go and they'll post daily for like 2 months, and then again doubt creeps in. They start comparing themselves to people have been, so they compare themselves to someone else's highlight reel, first of all, who's been doing it for 55 years, and they say, oh geez, well, I'm not as good as Gary Vaynerchuk, I must stink. And so then they take a month or two to cry in the mirror and wonder why things aren't working. And then they get motivated again, right? Because they buy somebody's masterclass for $239 a month. And so now they go and they're like, oh, I got to start posting again. Well, guess what happened? In that 2-month break, the algorithm says, hey, David has 500 followers. Nobody's interacting with him anymore. His stuff must not be worth anything. So now all of a sudden, though, I just went to a revival meeting of social media quote experts and bought all their t-shirts and books and magical steps. And now I start posting again. And now the problem is the algorithm still thinks nobody gives a rip of what David said because they haven't interacted with him in 90 days. And so people who think they're doing themselves a favor by taking huge breaks, many times are shooting themselves in the foot. So the things to do, that covered one of them, consistency. Number 2, video is king and queen and jester and everything else. I mean, you have to be doing short vertical video. You have to be getting in front of the camera. And if you're not comfortable being in front of the camera, I mean, I would say tough rip, then get over it. But if you're not, then there's ways to do faceless videos too. You can just do narration. There's all kinds of great ways to do videos without showing your own face. And so, that is a definite must do. And another must is advertising. I think if people truly want to grow, they should be advertising. If you want a business, you got to treat it like a business. People still look at social media the way they look at network marketing or other things, where they say, oh, well, if I just talk to enough people, my business will magically grow. Or if I just read books or think about it or rub myself on the back and think positive, my business will grow. No, you need to do the work. And it's the same thing with social media. If you want to be a business, you got to treat it like a business, be consistent, you got to advertise, and you got to constantly be married to that niche. I see lots of times people get off of their niche and it kills their reach because everybody comes to your channel thinking you're going to be talking about social media. All of a sudden now you're sharing, some video of a dog playing volleyball. You're like, well, everybody's going to love this because it's a dog playing volleyball. That's hilarious.
How about the singing cats? Singing cats.
Exactly. Exactly. The problem is the algorithm looks at that content and says, this has nothing to do with what David talks about.
Okay.
Right? Because David's supposed to be in it. If you look at any major influencer, they all have a couple things in common: consistency and bingeability. Right? You get on their channel and you know exactly what to expect. Ralph the Baker is a perfect example of that.
That's right.
If you go to Ralph the Baker's TikTok, guess what? You know exactly what you're going to see. You're going to hear him say, "One stick of butter, y'all." He's going to slam it down and he's going to cook a thing of Cajun food, right? You know exactly what to. And any real good influencer, when you arrive on their channel, there's no surprises. There's no, cat doing the moonwalk if they're a chef, because they know their niche and the algorithm knows their niche. And they've said, hey, here's the niche we're marrying ourselves to.
So what you're preaching, and we're going to go to another break, what you're preaching, and I think the consistent theme I'm hearing you talk about, engagement is critical to your growth on social media.
Exactly. And if you get too far, I'm a perfect example of what happens when you get off topic, right? Because during the last political cycle, I became quite loud about my feelings about one of the other candidates who has red hair and orange skin. And and when I started being quite vocal about that on my social media, that has nothing to do with my normal trance of I'm not an influencer, but I hire them. Right. Here's your tip for today, right? So the algorithm was expecting from me social media tips. All of a sudden, I'm this blazing liberal talking about all these other things. Right. And what to do? It absolutely killed my social media. Now, for me, it was a sacrifice that was for a worthy cause. But for a lot of people out there who, if they want to be influencers, you need to stick to your niche. And if you want to go off on things like I did, then have a channel that's like your personal channel where you can go and talk about your cat and your dog and the moonwalking zebras. But then have another one that's just for your business.
Yeah, dancing chihuahuas.
Exactly.
Y'all, we're going to run to another quick break. And when we come back, let's go here when we come back. Is any social media platform better than any other social media platform? You and I met on Periscope. Periscope is no longer a thing, and now I'm falling in love with TikTok. So when we come back, is one channel more valuable than another channel? Where should we be pitching our social media attention? So y'all hold tight. We'll be right back.
If you would like to support the Dr. Sims Show, send your donations to Cash App $Walter H. Sims. And remember, we stay high on life.
Hey guys, I would just like to ask you to pin on your weekly calendar Mondays 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so you can check out the Dr. Sims Show on IndieSoup.media.tv, and we are Indie Soup Media on all social media platforms. And my show airs every Monday evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm gonna do like I'm doing today, talk to good friends of mine, like-minded people that we, as my young folks say, we doing the daggone thing, and remember, we stay high on life. All right, welcome back, everybody. So David, is there any lane better than any other lane? Like if you're in Atlanta, I don't know if you have this in Hollis, Maine, but in Atlanta, there are hover lanes. So if you got to get somewhere quickly and you got 4 people in the car with you, you can get on this hover lane, pew, and just drive pretty much as fast as you want to. What say thee about social media and what should we be pitching our social media tent?
Yeah. So I think and I think a tent is like a perfect analogy because, a tent is made up of stakes, and those stakes should be going into ground that is based on your goals. And so if you're going to pitch your tent, with the goal of building just a large platform and you're not necessarily worried about monetization because you have a job or you have a business that pays your bills, that you may find a different approach. But or a different social network. But it really depends on what your goal is and what type of business you have as to where to be. In general, though, if you are a video content producer and you want to grow a large following, the fastest way to do that, in my opinion, is going to be either on TikTok or on Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels. You can grow pretty quickly. The bad part about that is that TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook Reels all pay the worst. And so even as you grow a large following, until you have like 50 to 100,000 followers, you're really not making 4 or 5 figures a month off that content typically. And so which now brings in the thing of like producing all this content, spending all this time on it. At what point do I start making money? And so now you got to be looking at selling sponsorships and everything else. And so if you are looking for straight monetization game, the social network that pays the best, if you like doing long form content, is YouTube. Because YouTube pays you on the, you can get sponsorships for it pretty easily, but also pays you on those commercials that interrupt the videos every minute. And you can get the best monetization through YouTube right now. Now, TikTok just changed their monetization like 2 weeks ago. And so they're paying a little bit better than they used to be paying, where, some influencers might be getting, a penny or two per view. And if you're having 600,000 or 700,000 views, that penny or two, is, $1,400 a video or something like that. And so, it really depends on your goals. If you're looking for conversions, meaning, David, I don't care about being an influencer. Like, I sell siding. What social network should I be on? Well, then now we're talking about an advertising game. And where is your target audience, right? If I sell siding, my target audience is probably at least 30 because they likely own homes. Not many renters are going to replace their own siding. And so, and if they're at least 30, that means then, they're probably on TikTok, but they might not be. The challenge with TikTok is if you're a national brand, it's a great place to be. Organically, you can reach people all over the world. But the difficulty is if I'm in the siding game and I'm in Hollis, Maine, I don't care if I'm reaching people in Boston, Massachusetts, because none of those people are my customers. And so it makes a whole lot more sense, even though I might get vanity numbers on TikTok and grow a huge following that pays Zippo, right? That's what people forget. Zero nada. You're like, I can have 10,000 followers on TikTok, and if none of them are customers, I'm not making any thinking money, which is how people live. Like, you're like, who wasn't that? Like, money isn't everything, but it's right up there with air, And so, like, it comes back to like, what are your goals? If I'm a siding guy, then I know, okay, look, I serve a 50-mile radius around my business, then I should be looking at advertising, which is probably going to put me more on the Facebook realm, Instagram realm, because they have such great targeting that can be zeroed in so easily versus in YouTube advertising, TikTok, where it's a little bit more national. So.
That's pretty good. So, how can people get in touch with you if they want to just sit down for maybe an hour, hour and a half, and kind of get an idea of what they should be doing as far as their social media? How can somebody contact you?
Yeah, so they can go right to my website, socialimpressions.net. There's an option up there to click one-on-one calls where they can book a call with me for consulting. And so that's the easiest way. Or they can hit me up on all social media. I'm at David A. Pride, so I'm pretty easy to find on anything and everything.
Well, that's good. So what's the next big thing for you? We got a couple of minutes left with our interview, and thank you again for being here. But what's the next big thing for David Pride?
I think the next big thing for me, we're growing this nonprofit, Hope for the Arctic, right now, and the work we're doing above the Arctic Circle to raise global awareness of the suicide crisis in the Arctic region is extremely important. Young men of Inuit descent, young Inuit men, are 50 times more likely to commit suicide than other men of the same age in Canada. And so young women in Greenland between ages of 16 and 21 are 35 times more likely to commit suicide than anywhere else in the world. And so there's a massive problem right now that the world isn't focusing on in that Arctic region. It has nothing to do with climate, has nothing to do with oil or war. I think it's time that the rest of the world cares about the actual people that are up there.
That is so awesome. So give your contact information one more time.
Yeah, I'm at David A. Pride. You can find me everywhere, or at socialimpressions.net. And then our organization is hopeforthearctic.com or Hope for the Arctic on all the social media.
That's good. Well, listen, thank you so much. And you give Aaron a big old hug for me, all right?
Oh, I will for sure.
All right. That's David Pride, y'all. Y'all hold tight and we'll be right back.
If you would like to support the Dr. Sim
Thanks,
Show,
Dave.
send your donations to Cash App $Walter H. Sims. And remember, we stay high on life.
A guy couldn't afford to get his girl's car fixed, so she asked her ex-boyfriend and he helped her. Listen, the amount of women that are justifying this shit is astonishing. Fellas, do yourself a favor and just stay single, cause it ain't shit out here. Tell him.
Well, I don't believe staying single is the end-all be-all solution. That's one of my good friends that I just met, Shamar A. Lion on TikTok. The long story short, real quickly, a guy couldn't cover or couldn't afford to get the car fixed, and so the girlfriend proceeds to go to the ex-boyfriend. I don't know the entire story, but my take, and I posted this on TikTok, my position is that a man in a relationship, we are responsible, period. Whatever needs to be done, it is the man's responsibility to do it. I feel the young man should not have put his significant other in a position to have to figure out how to get that car fixed. Women, 60% of our household, and that number, it may be bigger now, 60% of our households are led by single women. So a default response for women is to get things done by any means necessary. And a lot of times they don't feel like it's disrespectful. In fact, they feel like it's a badge of honor to be able to help out. Now, did she go to the right person to get the help? Well, that's debatable. But young men, if you are in a relationship, you're the head of the house. You're the king of that kingdom. You're the provider. You're the protector. A better response for her could have been, baby, we need the car fixed, and left it alone. Now, is this the only mode of transportation? We don't know. But baby, car needs to be fixed. You deal with it. You handle it. Hashtag Olivia Pope. Okay? So, see, that's why everybody needs a life coach in their life. Because the easy response is, oh, that's disrespectful. Oh, thou shalt not disrespect me. Did we make clear and concise expectation at the beginning of the relationship? Thou shalt not reach out to exes for anything. Thou shalt not be talking to exes for anything. If you need something done, you come to me first. Okay. So my advice going forward, what are we doing? Let's lay down expectation at the beginning of the relationship, so we won't run into trouble down the road. Okay. And don't get in a relationship. Come on now. I remember learning a poem in the 10th grade. And Lord Alfred Tennyson said something along these lines. It is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I don't want to be without a woman, okay? I'm married. I don't want to be without a woman. But I host the Blue Table Talk for Men on TikTok on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. And we challenge men to be better and do better. Now, did she misstep? Yeah. Because men, we're motivated by respect. And if you disrespect a man, you might as well dig a 6-foot hole, throw him in there and put dirt on top of it. You've lost him. Okay? But men, we need to take responsibility. Okay? We need to take responsibility. All right? If we're going to be the head of the house, be the head of the house. If we're going to be the man, be the man. And ladies, if you get a man in your life, let that man be the man. All right? All right, I'm Dr. Sim, and that's my 2 cents.
If you would like to support the Dr. Sim Show, send your donations to Cash App $Walter H. Sims. And remember, we stay high on life.
All right. Thank y'all for being here today. Another show, another episode. Tune in again next week, same time, same channel. And I really enjoyed my guest today. And David, thank you for being here. And remember, as I always say, if you stay high on life, life is going to stay high on you.